Hello, Science 30, and welcome to our video on gastrulation. So this is the story after we've seen ovulation and implantation. So you can see at the top, we've already started to talk about our zygote, morula, and blastula. So to remind you, the zygote is what occurs after fertilization happens. The morula is the structure that arises after a zygote goes through cleavage. So it splits up a bunch of times. Then the morula differentiates, goes through a change to become a blastula. So as you can see, I have that kind of shown along the top there. Fertilization, first day cleavage, morula, blastocyst. But what happens once the blastocyst gets implanted? We know that eventually a baby is made. So we're going to talk about gastrulation as a whole. So in your notes on page 19 at the very top, we're going to talk about what does this mean. So gastrulation starts on day 7 of pregnancy. All right. And gastrulation is a fancy name for the process in which our blastula, which is that structure you can see on the far side here, this guy right here, now is going to become a 3-layered embryo. So remember, in the last video I told you, we're going to find out the story of how something goes from fertilized or zygote into an embryo. And this is the final piece. So the blastula has to start to fold in on itself and create 3 layers. There is a separate video on the 3 layers that you will be filling in because you need to know those 3 layers. But you can see from here that the blastula or blastocyst that it was, so it was a blastocyst, now is a blastula, okay, is going to start to fold in on itself. So it's going to start creating an outer layer, a middle layer, and then an inner layer, okay? Now those 3 layers have different names. There's the ectoderm, which is outside, endoderm, which is the inside, and mesoderm, which is the middle, which you can't see on here. Middle should be here. Again, that's a video that you're going to watch all on your own. So now that the blastocyst has started to develop and fold itself, it becomes a gastrula. So again, the story goes zygote, morula, blastula, gastrula. And then you'll see this lovely word, differentiation. A gastrula goes through differentiation or changes to it to become an embryo. So we say cells differentiate or change at this point. In your notes are a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to quickly explain how you're going to fill it out. So you have the first few pretty easy to fill out. And then it says cells begin to differentiate at this point. I would like you to highlight that sentence and underline the word differentiate as it's really important. Any notes after that are actually not important on page 19. You don't need to worry about them. You just need to worry about the first 4 bullet points on that page. So this concludes kind of the story of where do we get an embryo from. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk in depth in the next couple videos about an embryo and how does an embryo become a fetus. So that's the next part to the story that we're going to start looking at. What structures do they develop and how do they become a fetus? So to give you some more context, a zygote, morula, blastula, gastrula become an embryo. An embryo is only called an embryo for the first 8 weeks of pregnancy. So we call that the embryonic stage of development, meaning the first 8 weeks of pregnancy, which most women don't even know they're pregnant for the first 4 weeks, to be honest. So that really shortens this window of when you would call something an embryo. That first 8 weeks of pregnancy is the embryonic stage. At 9 weeks gestation, so 9 weeks of pregnancy, every moment from that moment on is called the fetal development. Okay, so fetal development just means what we would call the fetus. The fetus is going through fetal development. A woman's pregnancy, however, is kind of divided into 3 trimesters. And so we'll talk about how do those 3 trimesters equate and talk to about how they are focused on the embryonic stage of development and the fetal stage of development. So I hope you have everything in your notes, and if you have any questions, please let me know.